Good morning.
Hey, Dave.
How are you today?
I'm doing great in beautiful California right now.
I love California. I love California, and I'm up here in Seattle, and it's pretty nice too. I hear we've got the landscaper in the background working his blower, so I'm glad that we're keeping the property up and maintained. So that's a nice thing over here. And yeah, I'm Dave Westcott, CEO of TransBlue. This is Dave Vetter, Senior Vice President of Operations at TransBlue. We're talking here today about building the sales pipeline.
Yeah.
Gosh, isn't this critical?
Oh man. Well, without sales, I'm not sure of too many for-profit companies that survive. So
Even the nonprofits, I think, struggle if they don't have sales. I mean,
yeah, no,
they
you
still
don't
have
get
to produce
contributions.
something. Like they still have to get money from somewhere, whether
That's
they fundraise it or gain it or whatever. They've got to get money. So building the pipeline, having a thick and full pipeline is absolutely critical to any business's success.
Yeah,
But where does that start? I think that starts with identifying your customer, right?
I think without a doubt. I think for any organization, you have to know who you're going to send your sales team after. You have to identify what's good business, and then you have to identify how you are going to gain their attention, how you are going to harvest, farm, whatever you're going to do. It's different stages of your pipeline in order for your company to grow the direction that you want it to grow. I mean, you could fill your pipeline with a whole bunch of junk that actually doesn't help your business or doesn't fit your business plan or your model or your operations, and you've just wasted a bunch of time and honestly hurt your reputation throughout your business or your model. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's so true. So we identify the customer, but I mean, we want to get so granular in that really building the pipeline. We want to get so granular in that, like, we want to know like what kind of car they drive, and we want to know what kind of sports they like, and we want to know what kind of beer they drink, and we want to know where they hang out, and we want to know what age they are. We want to know what background they have. We want to know what ethnicity they have. I mean, we want to know as much about the client as humanly possible.
Yeah, without a doubt. That's great because without that, when you're out there and you're finding, I mean, there's a whole bunch of people that are out there that are selling whatever you're selling. If you're in construction, there's a lot of concrete projects out there that you could be selling to, but if your organization is targeting the wrong type of customer, maybe you're more for your team and your operations are geared more towards larger projects, then it will be a waste of your time to pursue every concrete project that's out there for residential customers. But to your point also, maybe the type of concrete work you do is not just simple repairs. I mean, say you are doing residential work and, find concrete, see broken concrete, fix broken concrete. Maybe that's also not in your niche and not something that you're well prepared to do. You can get different communities. And this is just a fact of life, right? And when we look at, for example, a younger demographic, first-time home buyers would be a perfect example of this. You get a first-time home buyer, it's probably everything they could have done to scrounge together the down payment. They got their first house. Most of the furniture inside the house is probably handed down by mom and dad or some other
Yeah.
friends or from their apartment. They don't have money for large projects, capital projects. I remember when I bought my first house, I was thinking, oh yeah, bought bathroom remodel, I'll do it myself. I'd never make that mistake twice. But
Right.
the idea was to save some money. It came out great. Don't get me wrong. It looked beautiful, but I was like, wow, that was an entire, month or whatever of stuff I don't ever want to do again. I now actually hate doing tile work personally. I think it looks great. I love it, but I don't want to do it anymore.
I
So
feel the
now
same
I'm in a
way.
position where I can afford to have somebody do it for me.
Bingo. That's the best thing right there. Like having someone being able to do that for you. And you want to know who that ideal customer is. And, just in my own entrepreneurial journey, my, mission to build $1 million business, I was faced with this realization many, many years ago, maybe 16, 17 years ago. And I had to And I was looking at my portfolio of business. And when I was looking at that portfolio of business, I think, I had several hundred lawn customers. I can't remember exactly how many now, but I mean, it was hundreds and hundreds of just residential lawn customers. And, these were a lot of $35 mow edge blow and, many full service. We'll weed the beds and, prune the hedges, $75 a service customers. And, hundreds of these customers. And, I wanted to change my business. I wanted to scale my business. I wanted to grow my business. But you know what? It was really hard with all the collections and everything, like just collecting the money. Cause you do, just say you cut the lawn twice and you send out $75 lawn mowing invoice, and it's like you mail it to them, and then they've got to mail a check in. And this is before all of these automatic payments and all of these things were really popular. And you've got to collect, and now you've got hundreds of lawn maintenance customers that have 5 days to pay the bill, and if they pay and if they don't pay. And then you've got the lawnmower maintenance and the guys hitting the rocks and and I made this decision one year, and I said, okay, we are letting go of every residential client.
Rough
We are
day.
just we are just gonna send them a 30-day notice. I mean, just the act of doing that was freaking nuts. Just how am I going to pay the bills? How am I going to do the guys? And we are only going to go after this kind of work. And it was one of those decisions, one of those huge decisions that you make in business. I'm not saying anybody on the call should ever do anything like that. But what I'm saying is that for me, I started to understand who my client was, and I understand what I wanted to go after and where I wanted to get those customers. And for me, it paid off because what I was able to do was free up the time, free up the equipment, and I was able to put them on commercial jobs, and I was able to put them on commercial projects that,
Good.
took a lot less work, took a lot less, so, like you have to understand in your business what kind of client you really want to go after. And I know you've shared similar stories, with your days in True Green Land Care of just only focusing on the commercial client, really understanding and honing in who your client is. But that's the first step in building a pipeline. And you got to stay away from the business that's not good. And one of the biggest lessons I learned, and why I tell that story, is not all business is good business.
Nope. No. And you brought up my time over at Land Care, and Land Care for years, actually. And I don't, let's drop the other names out there. But anyway, the business was basically, for their sales team, they had a massive sales force. And it's about creating sales, right? So showing that you've got a full pipeline of work, but at the same time, it was see lawn, mow lawn, and a lot of that you get diminishing returns. Especially you have to, and we've already mentioned a couple times, but you have to carry your work towards what creates the returns that you really want. Not all good business is good business. Say, for example, you've got you're doing painting work, and you could pick up, and I'll just say for an example, maybe a whole bunch of small, just detail work as far as, just painting the front of, I don't know, some small operation like, I don't know, Bank of America or something like that. And
Yeah.
maybe that repetitive work doesn't work for you because your crews are geared up more towards warehouse size property, distribution warehouse size. And so, okay, reorganizing, shutting down, creating all of the protection, creating all of the, masking and everything you've got to do for a bank location, and you go crank out 100 of these, congratulations, good job if you can do that. But if your business isn't really scaled for that, what you prefer to do, because you have all these man lifts and everything else that you've got, is just blast, a quarter-mile long warehouse wall. Not all business might be the same value, but one is a 3-week project and the other one could be an all summer project.
That's right. So you have to really, really dive in and really, really focus on what this ideal customer looks like, on what this what this is a part of. I was at a conference and I was, walking by a Brightview booth, and Brightview
Yeah.
is, pretty much the biggest landscape snow company in the North America. I think their sales fluctuate anywhere between, 2.1 billion and 2.3 billion. And I know a lot of people don't like Brightview, and a lot of people do, but I mean, they've built a massive organization, the Brickman and Valley Crest, combination that happened a few years back. But one thing that I thought was kind of cool was that I was, just talking to one of the guys, just shooting the breeze, and we were talking about properties, and they were at an association event, and what they said was, if the property doesn't produce $20,000 a year in annual income, they're not even interested in looking at the property.
Yeah. I've heard that
You
from the
know,
same company. Huh?
So you think about that, and you think about them, they're really identifying their customer. They're really saying, listen, there's a lot of business out there. You said it perfectly, C-Lawn, Molon. There's a lot of customers out there. There's a lot of these $15,000, $10,000 maintenance accounts. What I've learned over the years that I've been in business, it doesn't matter if I'm selling to the CFO of PF Chang's, who's got $1 million plus year salary or whatever he may have, on their C-level team. It doesn't matter if you're selling to that key executive or that key executive's leadership team and he's just buying off, or you're selling to Mrs. Rosie Smith down the street. The truth of the matter is that sometime Mrs. Rosie Smith, for her $25 mow edge blow, is going to put you through as many of the paces on mowing that lawn as a commercial client will that's spending millions of dollars. Like, you got a customer for $25 and they're like, well, I'm going to check your Yelp reviews, and I'd like you to send me 3 references. You want me to send you 3 references for mowing my freaking lawn? Are you kidding me right now? I mean, literally, like, but they want that same level of just detail. And I'm not saying every client is like that, but what I'm saying is that going through those processes and those steps, it's very similar for a low spend client to a high spend client. And so you get to decide, as you're building your pipeline, what the size of the client and what the size of the job is that you want to go after. What's not worth us touching? What's a minimum? Even if it's low hanging fruit, does the low hanging fruit take away from my business? Do I lose money on the cost of opportunity lost? And can sometimes the small customer be just as painful to deal with as the large customer?
Yeah, it takes just as much time to make a 5 minutes for one customer is 5 minutes for another customer. You just one phone call, check in. So you're exactly right. You're dealing with somebody that maybe is in charge of distribution warehouses for Amazon, and you're updating them on a project. That project could be $20 million. And then, like you said, Mrs. Smith, same 5 minutes. Your operations team is investing the same amount of time for a lot less revenue and potentially a lot less profit. And building the pipeline, I think, involves, you have to really analyze what we're talking about, who your target market is, where do you excel. But there's other keys that go into that. You were talking about the demographics and everything, and the size projects and the type of projects and the type of work. But it's also the availability of that type of customer. It's also about making sure that you have the right mix of customers that allows you to have consistent work year round. For example, it's fantastic if you're doing, say, asphalt resealing, and you're going after all these asphalt resealing projects, but you're up in the north part of the country or something. There's a season. What are you going to do for the other part? Now, I know people that we're talking to, smart business owners, they know the seasonality of their business around the country, and you know what market you're after.
Yep.
But I've also seen a lot of owners and a lot of business owners that might get themselves in a position where they like one particular kind of project, and it actually is holding them back. It's taking up too many of their resources. They don't recognize it. They're like, but this is a great contract. This contract's worth $3 million. It's like, well, we understand. Yeah. But did you really look at that? How many years is that $3 million project? And how many other projects could you do? Maybe get yourself up to $12 million, get it all done in the same year, but you're so distracted by trying to hold on to these little ones. You mentioned Brightview earlier. Brightview is a nationwide landscape construction and maintenance company. And Brightview, I know at one point, I don't work there, but I do know at one point, and it's probably very consistent today, I would be shocked if they change, is about large corporate campuses. They want large corporate campuses. You were talking about minimum size, and they also want large homeowners associations, like down out of Florida and different parts out of California. I mean, these are multi-million-dollar properties per year, and that is their target focus. And they balance all of that by not getting distracted by having some, oh yeah, by the way, Wells Fargo reached out and they want us to take care of 500 Wells Fargo locations. That's not Brightview's bread and butter. They'd be less interested in that because they know it keeps them from focusing their team, their sales, over projects that are actually much more profitable, much more lucrative.
Because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. And I think you hit the nail right on the head. It's all about profit.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You've got to make profit. It doesn't matter if you bring on a 500 site client. If it's not profitable, there's no point.
No.
Right?
No.
So you got to move it out of the portfolio. You got to exterminate it from the business because it'll just suck up resources and time and energy that's not worth the end result. So we look at the pipeline. So now we've talked about identifying that customer. We've talked about understanding who that customer is and who that right fit is for you. And so, that's a big piece, but now we got to understand some numbers here. And so what you need to do is you really need to work backwards and, you want to look at what is your annual account value. So that's really an important number. What is the annual account value for any project that brings in it? And it doesn't matter if it's a one-time job or if it's a mowing contract all year long or a cement project or an asphalt project, doesn't matter. But what we want to understand that. So if the annual account value is 50,000 or 100,000 or even 10,000 in revenue, we want to understand that. And if our goal, because this is the entrepreneurial journey and with a focus on build $1 million business. And so if we want to do $1 million a year and the average project is $10,000, how many jobs do we need to sell?
Well, that's pretty. It's like 200. It's 100. Right? You need 100 jobs. So to do $1 million, but that's just to do the revenue of $1 million. You saying $1 million in revenue or $1 million in profit?
$1 million in gross revenue, just for our $1 million thing. We're just making $1 million in a year.
Doing 100 jobs.
That's a huge feat for many, many companies.
It is, but you can break it down, right? That's less than 10 jobs a month.
That's less than 10 jobs a month. So if we've got to sell 100 jobs with the average account value of $10,000, we know that we need to sell 2 jobs a week. So you think to yourself, can I sell 2 $10,000 jobs a week? Because we want to make the goals really, really simple. Mm-hmm. And guess what? The bigger the job, the less jobs you need to sell. So if you take the exact opposite of that and you say, hey man, I want to sell $100,000 jobs, how many do you need to sell?
I just missed your last part of the question.
All right, we need to sell 1 a month. Right? If we're selling $100,000 jobs and it's $1 million, we need to sell. It's just under 1 a month.
Less than that. Yep.
Yeah. So but you just average, just bank it out 1 a month, right? So you round up. So now you understand how many jobs you need to bring in. Well, now what do you need to understand? So once you understand the annual account value, now you need to understand your close rate. So every single time you're in front of a customer, you should be tracking what you're closing, right? This is absolutely critical. This is what we deal with our own sales force on a daily basis. What are you closing? What are you closing? What are you closing? What are you closing? Mm-hmm. And if you're not closing work, what's the issue?
Yeah, you got to identify what the issue is. There could be a lot of different issues that are causing you not to close work, right? A lot of different issues. It could be, is your salesperson a closer? There's a lot of nice salespeople out there, really nice, very friendly guys, but they don't close work. There's a lot of different customers that you're out. Maybe you're talking to the wrong person, right? Maybe your sales team isn't really good. I know we're starting to get more into the sales journey than the pipeline, but you're exactly right. Identifying, convincing your sales team and making sure that they feel the confidence that you're going to be able to sell the work, do the work, get it done, and then making sure that they understand how to get to that goal. It's great to say $100,000 job once a month. How do they get to that $100,000 job? How many leads?
Exactly. You know, I had this sales guy that worked for me one time. His name was Darnell. Darnell was a straight hustler. I mean, this guy was unbelievable.
Love
When
those.
Darnell first started working for me, man, he had to take the bus to his appointments. Like, they didn't even have a car, but he was a hustler. So I'll give him this. But he'd go to an appointment and he would literally tell the client, sign. And he would literally give him a pen, sign, 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 sign,
Was
sign.
Darnell a big guy?
No, Darnell was actually probably 5'6", super skinny. But Darnell was the top producer month after month.
That's great. It's tenacity, right? I mean,
Right?
that's it.
He just closed. He also had the most
Fearless.
cancellations after close, but he was just a tenacious sales guy. And so a lot of sales is like that, right? You need to be tenacious. You need to really go after the business. But so let's just say, okay, we've got that part figured out, and we understand that the average close rate is around 30%.
Maybe
So,
for your industry. Yep.
yeah. So, that's pretty typical. National Association of Sales says 30% is average for a sales guy. So you can kind of put that in as a benchmark, right? And you've got different kind of sales. You got cold calling and cold emailing and warm leads. I mean, there's a lot, but just over the average, it's around 30%. So you take that as a benchmark. I've got 30%. So that means we should close 1 out of 3. So if we send 3 bids out today, we should get 1 of them. So what that tells me is that if I've got a good salesperson who can close at the average sales rate, and I need to close 2 jobs per week, I need to be in front of how many customers? 6. That means I need 6
a little
customers.
More than 1 a day.
No more than 1.
If you're running 5-day weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. So what does that mean? That now tells me how many estimates I need. It tells me how many estimates I need for the entire year. And now I want to factor in slippage. And what is slippage? Slippage is where, somebody calls in and they're interested in our services, but we're not able to get a live appointment. We're not able to get a hold of them. We see that that's maybe 20% of all leads end over end. And so, now we know we need 8 call-ins.
Yep.
And so what we now understand is that now we need to understand our cost of acquisition. And we talk about this. Understanding our cost of acquisition enables us to understand how much it costs us to buy every client. You've watched the Shark Tank, right?
Yep.
And Mark Cuban, I love Mark Cuban. Do you like Mark Cuban?
I do. He's awesome.
He is awesome. I mean, I'll watch an entire Shark Tank episode and he will not buy anything. And then when he finds that one thing that he wants, he's like, he's bulldogging, he's fighting, he's calling names of people. He's telling them they're short and they're not smart. I mean, he's just ruthless out there, right?
Gotta be.
Yeah, but I love him because one of his first questions he always asks is, "What's the cost of acquisition? What's the cost of acquisition?" He always wants to know what's the cost of acquisition per client. He wants to know what it's going to cost him to buy the market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the other sharks are the same way.
Yeah, you've got to know, what's your investment to win that customer over, and then making sure that you're allocating, if that fits in with your business model and you're able to recover that, making sure that you're putting that investment in. I see a lot of, we talk about so many different examples, but we see owners and everything that sometimes to save a buck, they will save a buck on the stuff that's bringing in the bucks, and that is saving money on their pipeline.
And that's the bullet to the head.
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, what the exact opposite usually is supposed to happen. If you are lacking sales, if you're feeling a tough part in your time, it is the exact wrong time for you to hold back on your cost of acquisition or try to save $1 and I'll save on marketing. I'll save on this. Like, wow, you're just creating a snowball effect. Yeah.
Yep. That's how you go out of business. So if the cost of acquisition, and we're just using round numbers to make this easy, if the cost of acquisition was $1,000 and the close rate was 30%, now you know that if you have 8 leads that come in, what did that cost for those 2 jobs? Well, those 2 jobs just cost me $2,000. Mm-hmm. So now you know that every week, 4 weeks in a month, whatever, that you're going to spend $8,000 on the cost to bring those jobs in that you need. So, or, whatever it is. So you need to make sure that you have that penciled in, right? Because if you don't understand that, now you're going to be in trouble. So now on your marketing spend, that it's going to cost you, $8,000 to bring in 8 contracts, right?
Yeah. Yep. And
So
sometimes you can also, and the math works out, and and this may be further along in this conversation, but then you can also look at the type of customer that you're going after also affects that cost of acquisition, right? Some customers cost
yep,
more to get than others.
yep, exactly. And also your the other thing that affects this and your close rate is so very important, because let's say that your cost of acquisition is $1,000 at a 33% close rate, or 1 out of 3. So, but what happens if you drop to a 15% close rate? Your cost of acquisition just doubled, right? Because you're
Mhm.
closing one half less than you were before. So now you've got a $2,000 cost of acquisition. So your close rate really plays into this. If you're at 22, 23%, sales closing rate, maybe now your cost of acquisition is 1,500, 1,600. So you need to understand where your close rate falls into this. And this is a metric that you need to make sure you manage with your sales team, because if you're not managing this with your sales team, if you're not following up on this, if you don't have a scorecard that's always looking at how many leads did you run, how many you close, when are you going to close, when are you going to close, and all of the metrics that go behind closing, because closing isn't, oh, I met with the customer and we had a really great conversation, I got them a bid, I really think these guys are going to do it. I'll give you a quick example. I work with a marketing company, a personal brand company, great people, awesome, fantastic. And about 2 times a week, I think about their proposal that they sent me back in January. And I think about it and I think, okay, I'm about ready to move forward with that. Okay, I'm getting there. Okay. And the truth of the matter is, they sent one follow up, never followed up again. But you know that if they followed up with me even twice, I probably would have just pulled the trigger, because I'm like ready to pull the trigger now. But 5 months have gone by, but they've never followed up.
Uh,
They've got a good product. They do a good job. They just don't follow up. So there's all of these metrics that go into selling. You never know where your customer is at. And you should be continuing to ask them, are you ready to move forward? Are you ready to move forward? Are you ready to move forward? Because you can have a deal that's in the closed section and it can be gone.
yeah. Well, if you put yourself in the shoes of the customer, right, and you're out there and you're trying to create these sales, think about what kind of person your customer is and what they're dealing with, and what they're making decisions on. And I'll give you, say, for like a retail box store or something like that. Now, usually they'll have plans well in advance, somewhere from corporate office. We're doing this first, we're doing that for this next, and whatever. But if you got someone that's more like a commercial property owner, they may have a dozen things on their list of to-dos for that particular year, or just over the next 3 years or whatever. It may be replacing some stuff on the roof. It might be doing some upgrades to an elevator system. It may be doing some upgrades into the lobby, maybe putting up some new screens, or who knows, whatever it might be. Your sales guy reaches out and he's in charge of putting up all these screens, all this electronics in the lobby. The other guy is in charge, is sales guy, not from your company, is the guy that's in charge of remodeling and making cool, fancy new elevators. The elevator guy is calling every single day or every single week, touching base with that property manager. Hey, man, you ready to move forward on those elevators? I mean, it's going to look really cool. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. Your guy calls once, says, hey, yeah, we can definitely do that for you. Absolutely. Here's my number. And you don't hear from him again. Guess who's going to get the job first? It's the same amount, same pool of money. Neither one is a priority,
That's
right?
right.
The elevator guy just closed himself, some $10,000 elevator, remodels all across these buildings. And your guy with the big TV screens is sitting there. He goes, man, they just don't want to go forward. I guess I haven't heard from them.
That's the number one thing. You got to understand, you got to be a hunter, you got to be a killer. Listen, I hope that you enjoyed this call. This is part one. This was a great segue into building a pipeline. There's so much more detail. There's so many more things we're going to be discovering and talking about over the next week, tips and tricks and secrets. If you found this interesting, give it a like, give it a share on your network. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your time. If you liked it, follow me, Dave Westcott, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, David Westcott. Just shoot me in there. If you want to talk about sales or you want to talk about growing your business, happy to chat and help. Shoot me a direct message, and I'm happy to set up a time. Follow Dave Vetter on LinkedIn. Hit him up. And if you found this, like I said, beneficial, then give us a like, give us a share. Throw us some comments, throw us some feedback if you've got any questions. We'd love to see you be successful. We'd love to see you grow your business. And we just appreciate your time this afternoon. Thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Bye, everybody.